Welcome to the Inspiring Humans podcast. We are so happy to have you listening. My name is Stephanie Woolard, and this podcast is a platform to showcase the incredible human spirit. On this podcast, I'll be interviewing people from all over the world and all walks of life who will be sharing with us their personal dreams and their dreams for the future. I believe that through coming together and creating community, incredible things are possible. In fact, anything is possible. And I hope that this podcast is a launch pad for creating the new world that we want to see, that will have humanity free, thriving, and living in their full self-expression. Today on the Inspiring Humans podcast, we have Nick Bartlett, who is an awesome friend of mine, but also one of the smartest business minds that I have ever met. So it's an absolute privilege to have you on today, Nick, and to be chatting to you and taking a bit of a deeper dive into what you're working on and what's led you to this point.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Steph. Look, can't wait to have a chat.
So Nick is one of those incredible entrepreneurs that has, comes up with these ideas that are informed by the market and the need, and workshops these products, and somehow has seemed to have success after success, among, I'm sure, some challenges and failures. But I'd love to just ask you, what are you working on at the moment?
So it was January 10th last year. We were living in Slovenia, and we got a flight out to New Zealand, where I'm from. So me and my wife and my two kids were twins. And so January 2020, pretty good timing. Had no idea what was coming. But next thing you know, we're in lockdown, and our flights have been cancelled that would have taken us back to Slovenia. So in effect, we kind of relocated country, basically as far away from Slovenia as you can get, accidentally, which has turned out to be an amazing thing. So it's been great. But along the way, some opportunities came, and I was really conscious of the fact that the way I put it was the deck of cards was going to be reshuffled. If you think of the world as a deck of cards, it's just going to be all muddled up and look completely different. And you could analyze it to death and try and figure out the minutiae of it, or you could just kind of go, more people are going to work from home. People are going to want more pot plants. You could just go real simple, because who could have predicted the markets going crazy as they did and everything else? So I just got to kind of keep it general. So anyway, during lockdown, I had some ideas. I launched one of those ideas as an e-commerce company, which was just selling hair clippers and stuff. So that's getacut.co.nz. And my wife runs that now. It's done about $1 million worth of turnover within New Zealand in its first year. So it's been quite a good little business. But a few months later, I was having problems getting refunds for my flights that I bought, that we're trying to get home. We kept on buying these tickets to get back. They kept getting cancelled. And the first flight was booked through Expedia, and they wouldn't give me my money back. So I went through what's known as a credit card chargeback process, because that was the only way. And that's where your bank basically reverses a transaction that happened on either MasterCard or Visa. And so I did that process. I filled in some forms. It took about 3 weeks, and I got my money back, which was great. But I noticed that no one else seemed to be doing it. I seemed to be the only person who had done it, and I thought that was strange, because it's not that hard. And lots of people were complaining about not getting their money back from Air New Zealand and other airlines and travel agents and stuff. So it just seemed strange. And the media was all on about this every other day of the week about how this was happening, but no one in the media was saying, well, just do a chargeback. So anyway, I kind of got the gears working, spinning, and I was like, what if we just made this process, but what if we made one process in software that every bank in the world could use, right? Because every bank in the world's got their own process for this, even though they all link back to the same rules from MasterCard and or Visa. Doesn't make sense they've all got their own one when it's just basically the same thing. And if you did one, you could make it really good, really easy, much better. So that's kind of the first idea. But I realized I didn't really know anything about chargebacks. So basically did what I encourage any good entrepreneur to do, and that is we went to market with absolutely no product and no idea what we were doing. So that's it. But that's the key, right? We wanted to become really smart about and informed about chargebacks in the quickest amount of time, and not worry about, we had some theses and some stuff like that, but we just wanted to get good at something quickly, so we weren't knobs. I gathered some people together from across the globe, actually. New Zealand, Australia, Slovenia, UK. We went to market, and we just got absolutely smashed with people wanting us to help them do a chargeback. So the business was called Refund Club. And basically we said to people, look, if you need a refund, come to us and we'll help you. So did that and got like 400. We did about 400 applications for people. We got back a few $100,000 for them, and learned all the ins and outs of the system. So kind of got good really, really quickly. The problem was, as we got good at it, the demand started to decrease. So, okay. And that was because of a lot to do with the demand was very travel related and stuff. And we found it difficult to branch out of travel because the amounts for non-travel related chargeback tend to be a lot less. So like, something you bought from the store or something that didn't show up that you bought online. And so, so that wasn't really, didn't make sense. Travel made sense, but travel was sort of waning as we got further away from the travel bookings that were before COVID. So anyway, sort of one of the theses we had all along was that we could actually create a tool that could prevent chargebacks from happening in the first place. And we also realized from talking to lots of banks and disputes teams and stuff as part of our journey that this was a problem that the banks and the card issuers were facing every day. So to answer your question, what am I doing now? I'm working at a company called Resolved.ai. And we essentially creating a disputes API for card issuers or banks. And what that means is it means that you'd go into a transaction that you don't know what it is. So you'll be looking at your bank statement on your phone and you're going to see a transaction for $30 and you're going to, what the WTF is this? Which is something I think probably happens to people like once a month, I think. They just don't know. And then you go into that transaction and then we'll sell our software to the bank. So we'll put a little button on that transaction that says get help. And then they press on that button, sends a transaction to us, and then we essentially help you get a refund from the merchant or get it solved basically because we map out all the refund policies, rules, links, and all that kind of stuff for each individual merchant. Essentially help you sort it out with the merchant all online without having to call up your bank and create a chargeback or a dispute or something like that costs you a lot of time and them a lot of money. That's where we're at. Early stage, got a proof of concept, and we're shopping it around to various banks around the world to try and find our first customer. So that's the current gig.
But I'd love to. I just want to, and you touched on it before, but for people that have an idea that have never acted on it, or a project or a product, what practically speaking, what are the first few steps that you can do to test if it actually has weight to it?
Yeah, great question. So your job is to measure demand. So that's what you got to do if you've got this idea. I also, I think it's healthy to everyone to assume that all of their ideas are terrible. So if you just acknowledge that your idea is terrible straight away, it's a really healthy thing to do. And the reason why your idea is terrible is because no one's bought it yet. As soon as someone buys it, then you can say your idea is not terrible. Okay, but all ideas are terrible. You can't sell a secret. So I will tell you any idea I've ever had. I don't care. Can't sell a secret. You should share your ideas broadly and widely. You should solicit people's opinion. And then ultimately, once you've kind of got enough of that, those insights, either in a science, well, hopefully as scientific as possible, but anything's better than nothing, you then go and measure demand in a more formal way. So the question is, how do you start? So the way that you go to market these days is you completely fake it. So you come up with your idea. Do you want to give me an example, like a shop or an app or something? Would an app be relevant or a product?
Just a product. Maybe use your example of something you were working on in Slovenia when I caught up with you over there that time. That one of those.
One tap. Yeah, that was part of a bigger company. So it was kind of startup in a startup within a startup. I'll give it a simple example. What about
GeoOp? Because that was idea.
Yeah, GeoOp, that would be talking for the next half an hour about how not to do things, because that was my first software business. And there was no playbook about how to do SaaS and mobile because we were right at the very beginning. I was mid-20s. I thought we knew everything, and we didn't.
Share that. How did you do that at the beginning?
Well, I'll come back to it. I want to answer you. I want to tell people how to start a business because it's so important. So let's pretend it's a product. You have a product idea. Okay. So what you do is you find a 3D renderer who can render your product and make it look real, even though it's not. Okay. So now you've got a render of what this product might look like. Awesome. Now what you do is you go on Shopify or Webflow and you build a landing page for your product, right? So you basically start working on the marketing of your product. Like, here's a picture of it, here's what it's called. Spend like as little time on the name and stuff as possible. It doesn't matter. And then build out your landing page. The quicker, the better, rather than the prettier, the better. The quicker you produce something, the better. If it's totally crap, that's fine. It's better than nothing. So you put together this landing page with your product, with your fake images. Step one. Step two, open a Facebook ad account and a Facebook page for this brand you just created yesterday, hopefully, because you don't want to spend too much time on this. And then start running ads with different, you would have written down some hypotheses, like people who have injuries are going to want this product, or people who are over 35 are going to want this product. So you might have written down some hypotheses who are going to buy it. Anyway, run ads saying, promoting a product that then link to the landing page, right? And then on the landing page, there'll be like a buy button that could go through like some cart process that ends up with out of stock as a message, or it could actually just go nowhere. Because what you're doing is you're running this ad on Facebook and you're seeing what percentage. There's obviously zillions of statistics you collect through this process, but you're basically going to see what percentage of people click on the ad who see it. So if you run this ad to every Australian, just target all Australians, and 1% of the people who saw it, and it's not going up, right? Like, it's just sort of saying around 1%. Then either your idea is not very good and people don't want it, you're not solving a problem, or you've got the wrong angle. But either way, you've got now some scientific evidence, and you've polled a shit ton of people, all very simply, to say, okay, maybe this is not right. And this is one of my favorite quotes. The speed of human progress, we're talking about humankind, right, is the speed of experiment, right? And what that means is, it means that everything we know is, everything we call human knowledge, is a result of an experiment. Like, so if I punch a desk and it hurts my hand, that was an experiment, we now know. And we know that it's true because if I do it again, I'll get the same result. And that's what, the scientific method is. So essentially, imagine if New Zealand, if the world did no experiments today, like nothing, then the world would have learned nothing today. So the more experiments you have over time, the faster the rate, the greater you accumulate knowledge. And that applies, like, think about the printing press came out. So now, like, knowledge could be distributed. And then, now people start reading and writing and all this sort of stuff. And then, then when the internet came along, it kind of like this turbocharged, you had books and newspapers and everything else in the middle, but the internet came along and now information is being dispersed super quickly and people can run experiments faster and then they can publish the results. And so the point is that all you're doing when your startup is running these experiments, and the quicker you run them, the quicker your good experiments will become great. And the quicker you kill off the bad ones to make room for the next experiment, the next business idea. So anyway, you run this ad, you get the click-through rate. Let's hope that it's more like north of 3%. The more, the better. And then you're going to get a calculated number, which is basically the cost of a click. So if the cost of a click is $1 and you're selling $1,000 product, then yeehaw, you're onto something. Keep going. If the cost of a click is $1 and you're selling a $10 product, you're screwed. Go back and start again, right? And you haven't built anything, and you haven't sourced anything, and you haven't wasted the one resource that you've got a limited amount of, which is time, pursuing your idea that you think is good. You've gone to market and you found out that, there's great interest or there's not great interest. And then you can keep going. And then once they get to the website, you can see what percentage of people click on the buy button, right? So if you paid $1 a click and then 10% of the people who landed on the site buy it, then you have $10, cost them $10 to add it to the cart. Again, that's all relative to the price that you're, or the margins that you've got to your idea. But I hope it's clear though that you can start to evaluate: is there a demand? Do people want what I'm doing? Because that's all your job is, no other job. Before you actually have to do anything. And the faster that you could do this process, the statistically higher chance you have of starting a fantastic business. And I'll add to that, it doesn't have to be a fantastic business, just do a business, sell it, and hopefully that'll give you the financial freedom to then pursue wilder, bigger, bolder ideas. It doesn't have to be Facebook that you start on the first go. Just start something. If you could start something and sell it for $100,000, that can be life-changing, right? Get it to $30,000 in profit a year, right? You have enough to live off and you'd have a $100,000 asset. It could change your life. So run these experiments. It doesn't have to be perfect. Main thing is to just run with one of them. Run with the best one. If it's some sort of normal thing, then I do recommend selling it because I think it creates better use of your time. And then you've got a bit of a capital behind you to maybe pursue bigger bigger ideas that could be more impactful on the world.
Awesome tips, Nick. Thanks a million. And so my other question is, for people that don't know much about listing a company when it gets to that stage on the stock market, can you just give us a bit of a snapshot of what that actually looks like and how it's done?
Yeah, it depends. There's quite a few different ways that it's done, and it does depend a bit on the country. But yeah, so I think it's got easier to list companies on the stock market than it used to. So I think there was quite a high bar. Now in Australia and the ASX, you're seeing a lot more earlier stage companies getting listed. And you've got potentially different types of listings as well. So you can have like IPOs, or you can have compliance listings, or you can have SPACs, which are these old but now popular methods. So you have these, like the simplest way is to buy a company that's already listed. So that's what's popular at the moment. So you have these special purpose acquisition vehicles, which are like a shell company that's listed on the stock exchange because it's compliant and whatever else. And then they merge with a company that wants to go public. And so kind of it bypasses a bunch of stuff they'd have to do. So that's quite popular. Compliance listing is quite similar. It's where you basically meet all the requirements to list your company, which is quite a lot. But and then you list on the stock exchange, but you don't take any money from the public. And that's what we did actually with GeoOp. So we did it that way. But we did raise some money, but from sophisticated investors. And then you got the IPO, which is where you're taking money from the public, and an IPO is really reserved for companies which are, at some pretty significant scale, looking to offer liquidity to the early investors and to the founders and the employees and everyone else. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I would note though that the need to IPO has drastically reduced. So one of my favorite companies in the world actually is Safety Culture, based out of Townsville. So they're, I guess, like a top 5 Australian tech company. They're recently valued at around $2 billion. And they started off as a garage company in Townsville, so literally in a garage. Now they're this huge company which is having a huge impact on people's safety around the world. So yeah, why did I mention them? So, sorry, why did I mention them? What am I answering again?
Just about the process of listing on the stock market.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So I'm bringing them up to say that they just don't need to list. They just don't need to list. Like they're more than enough revenue to list on the stock exchange, and that would be, if they did it, they could offer liquidity to all their shareholders and their employees, and they could high five the listed the company. All the things I just said that would be benefits, they are doing without listing. So they are offering liquidity to investors. They're offering liquidity to employees. The founder has taken money off the table. They've got everything they could possibly want without listing. And so by listing, their life would be worse, because now they'd have to be more quarterly focused, because when you're listed, you got to put out these quarterly forecasts. And then if you miss them, your share price dips and then the morale goes down and all this kind of stuff. But being private, they can, I think they can hold a longer term view of where they want to go with the business. They can make decisions that might impact them negatively in the short term, but benefit them in the long term. And they don't have, they don't have to work, they don't have to manage the PR of the result. They're just better off. So I think you're seeing that now. Like Atlassian would be another great Australian example, where they listed, but after a very, very, very long time. They could have listed way before, but they did it eventually, but they just didn't need to, because you can get all the benefits of listing nowadays on the private markets anyway. So I think listing is something that you potentially want to do, but you don't do it you do it much later nowadays. I think that would be, and some people do it much sooner as well. Some people do it way sooner. Some people do it right at the beginning to create capital or to have some other benefits, or to be more trustworthy to their customers or whatever. So some people, and I see this quite a bit in the Australian stock market, there are people who do it really early. But I think that if you've got a good idea and the numbers stack up, that you do get all the money you want from private investors, and then you IPO when it makes sense.
Awesome. Now, I've got, as well as you starting businesses and reaching huge success and selling them and all the rest of it, you've invested in businesses. And
Yep.
Can you share what's that like, being an investor? What's the world of investors like, and what do you look for in a company that you're going to put your money behind?
Yeah, good question. So I've I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to be a full-time investor or not. I haven't figured that out or not. So I'm kind of saying it's something that, for me, it's all just kind of made sense, and it's gone really well. But I think it's been a function of the entrepreneurial journey. I think it's been a function of the goods and the bads and everything that I've done myself has given me some sort of intuition and edge, and when it comes to investing. I just don't. They're just so correlated. If you woke up as you graduated from uni and you wanted to be an investor, yeah, sure, it could work out. And in fact, it probably would have worked out because the stock market's, even though it's just gone down in the last 10 years. So kind of the rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. But yeah, my investments have done it really, really well. I won't be shy about it. Like they've killed it, and consistently. And it's because of so what did I do? What I do. So basically what I did is I invested in companies that were either in my lane, so my lane being stuff I know I'm interested in, like whether it be like a business that I'm doing. So right now I'm doing fintech, so that's kind of my lane. I started off doing e-com, and then I did workforce management, which was kind of mobile SaaS area. So basically I invest in companies that are in my lane or adjacent to my lane. So safety culture would be a great example. So I was doing GeoOps and workforce management. A friend of mine told me how amazing this IOTA product was. I was like, had a look at it. I'm like, this is amazing. Where's this from? Townsville. And somehow or another, I ended up getting in touch with Luke, the founder. He came down to Melbourne. We had coffee, and he's just such a fantastic, genuine person. So immediately hit it off. Anyway, I think I ended up there a couple of times and kept in touch with each other. Then eventually I went up there, went into the garage where they were building the software from. And this is 2011, probably 2012. I'll say 2012. Yeah, somewhere around there. And just like, wow, this is amazing. And I think only they knew what they had. Like, he tried to tell investors and stuff what they had, but nothing, the market was different then, things were less developed. So he hadn't really got any attention from anyone other than customers, which is all that matters, actually. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, as soon as you want to raise some money, I'll be the first person to put some money in. And I guess I was only like late 20s, and I said to him, I'll put in a 6-figure sum, which like sounds a bit crazy, yeah. Like, wow, commit 6-figure sum to some startup in a garage. It just made sense, like what he was doing and the traction and the feedback and the way that the customer, so it was at a bottoms up sales strategy that the users of the product would adopt it and then bring it into the big companies. Genius. Like, so of course I knew that I could recognize the guy's genius from mostly all my own mistakes. Like, this is how you do it. So yeah, that's been a life-changing investment for me. So yeah, the company's gone from that first round now to $2 billion in value, and that investment's done exceedingly well. And why? Because of an incredible founder who had a genuine desire to change the world. He doesn't care about IPO. He doesn't care about having dollars in his account. He just wants to deliver on his vision. And he had 10 years of practice in what was wrong to then work on this forward-looking solution. So yeah. Is there a market? Yes. Is the solution good? What are the market alternatives? So what else could people do to solve this problem? Can they execute? I mean, if those things tick off, then because about what they do, or at least they're adjacent to what you do, so you know enough to know who they're competing with and what could go wrong, then I don't really think too much beyond that, to be honest. And if they were to give me like a bunch of due diligence documents, like a cash flow forecast and all this shit, I don't even look at it. Fucking irrelevant. Is there demand for your product? Yes or no? Have you proven it? To what extent have you proven it? That's it. And of course, okay, if the founder's a douche, then there's going to be execution risk, and you might steer clear. But as long as the founder seems like a decent enough person, then throw your money in, because you've got to be in it to win it. So that's basically how it's worked with the various investments. Pretty much all of them. Invested in Receipt Bank as well. Not long after, they just sold for there's a public they sold for. Not sure if it's public or not, but they sold for several $100 million. Not quite $1 billion, but that kind of range. And again, like, I was in that area of accounting and all that kind of stuff. So, I knew what they did, knew how it works, knew the founders, could see that they were clearly getting traction. People wanted it. And throw your money in. Like, you don't need to, and then at the same time, like or another one, Crimson Consulting here in New Zealand. So they pitched for money in 2014 at a local venture capital event, which I just happened to be at. And I knew about, they basically help people get into Ivy League universities. Right, that's their gig. And I, at the time, was looking at doing an MBA. So I was sort of on top of the idea of what it takes to go do an MBA at a top university. And so these kids, the kid, Jamie, who was only like 21 at the time, pitched his business. We can help people get into these Ivy League universities, blah, blah, blah. And, I had some serious concerns. So I wrote the smallest check that I've done. So I just wrote a $10,000 check into that business because I was like, it's a bit of consulting. Is it actually tech? Is it, all these concerns? But I knew that he was solving a problem. He was going to help more people from the Southern Hemisphere go to top universities. Is that worthwhile thing doing? Yes. Is it a problem? Yes. Is anyone doing it? No. The kid's super genius as well. That helped. And so now that business is worth like $200 and something million, and it was worth $3 million at the time. And there's a bunch of other businesses which I hope will be at this kind of value. But I've got a bunch of other businesses who are on similar trajectories that are really, really well. Henry, Wellington, Spork, doing super well. And then the counter to this, if someone comes to me with a biotech idea or something in that realm, like if I start investing in that, that's when I'm going to lose, right? If I start thinking that I can assess topics or areas outside, like way outside my lane, that's when I'm going to lose, because it's just gambling, right? Like someone could come to me with like this incredible, cancer pill, and just everything about it's great, but there could be another guy out there with a much better cancer pill, which I'd have no idea about because I'm not in that industry, right? Whereas if you're into that area, you know about it, you can put things in a relative position to where they sit in the stack or in the world. So if you can't do that, then it's not such a good idea to invest. And if you can, leverage it, take advantage of it, use it. Don't overthink it. Expect to lose your money. Be happy if you get it back. And if you ever get the chance to take money off the table, so I've been really lucky with a lot of my investments that there has been opportunities to sell down as they raised money. I think selling 20% every time is a pretty good rule of thumb. Depends on your circumstances and all that, but doesn't hurt to take some profit, de-risk as you go. So that's how I do investing. The other one that's kind of interesting is, I told you about Resolved at the start of this interview, and I think I've invested in 2 companies along the way. So basically, I'm researching my company's area, right? Trying to talk to people, because it's a fairly new area for me as well, what we're doing with disputes. So I'm talking to anyone who can kind of give me some insights, and of course, I meet some interesting people. They tell me what they're doing. I know enough about what they're doing to know whether or not it's good, and I end up investing in their company. So again, it's that journey, and the inquisitiveness and the following your passion and seeing where it takes you. And then when you see good stuff along the way, backing yourself to take a punt. It's only money, and there's infinite amounts of money in the world, but there's not infinite amounts of time. Sound like a broken record. You can always make more money. So if you've got money, you should keep throwing it at stuff that you believe in and you think can make a difference.
I love that. And you mentioned fake it until you make it before. And I'd like to kind of rephrase that way of saying it. And it's kind of, I like to call it living into the vision, like putting a vision out there and just, because that's how it works. When you do get a vision that you're lit up by, and you create, you said create a landing page, create ads, like what would this look like? You actually kind of start to embody it.
Yeah, I think there's also another type of category, which is like the idea of your life's work. And I think that maybe is closer to what you're talking about. And I think you're an absolute perfect example of life's work. Absolutely. Luke from Safety Culture is a fantastic example of life's work. What is life's work? Life's work is when your life takes you down a path that you then turn into an organization and your organization becomes 100 times bigger than you. So the impact in that area that you care about is amplified through this org that you essentially put together. And it all happens naturally and progressively without any science, right? Now I think that is still the dream. Like, I think that would be the best outcome. But the problem is that there's so many variables that have to line up, right? And most people, and so many people, as we talked about before, are waiting for those variables to line up in a row so they can do it, especially to do their life's work. And what I was sort of pitching before was, well, like, take control, like take the variables and put them into groups and have some success, because I think any success or any kind of even if the business fails, it's still a success in some ways. Is going to put you in a position to pursue your life's work. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can't afford to pay your bills and the rest, like, it's a lot harder for the life work might come unstuck because of life getting in the way. Whereas if you put yourself in a position where you no longer have to sell your time, and you do that using a scientific method, as we discussed, then you can still pursue your life's purpose, right? Like, I'm only 36 years old now. So there's plenty of time to either start 10 more businesses or to start one, and that just have one for the rest of my life. I would, if I had the choice at this point, I'd rather just have the one than the 10, right? Like, I've done the 10, and I've done lots of, built businesses, sold businesses, exited, invested, yeah, I would like to make a business that has a big impact on the world. But I feel so much more empowered doing it from a position of strength than a position of weakness. So yes, life's work is the ultimate. Go for it. If you can do it, do it. Yeah, you can increase your chance of getting there by following a scientific method, is my belief. If it all just happens naturally, then you're just really, really, I think you're really, really lucky if you can do that.
Yeah,
so yeah. Increasing your luck is kind of what I'm trying to say. Yeah, because ultimately, you're not going to run these tests around these product ideas or whatever, around stuff you don't give a shit about, because then it's got a huge risk. The founder doesn't care, kind of has no genuine interest. So you're kind of like putting a hole in the idea anyway. So hopefully pursue things. But, so many times people have an idea about what the world needs, and it turns out to be something slightly different. And that's only found out through discovery and by doing, and it can't be found out any other way.
And I think it can, shortcut massively the time spent on it as well. And it's,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I see this all the time, right? Like, people start some idea and it has some traction, and basically they're spending the next 5 or 10 years even like pushing this idea uphill, right? And they think it's, I don't know, like, they don't realize it's the market alternatives are really good is the problem. for instance, say you're building a fancy new bank in Australia. Well, the banks in Australia are far less shit than the other banks around the world. So if you built that same neobank, like cool banking experience in a different country, same thing, it'll do better than Australia, because Australia has better market alternatives, and that I'd give like the combanks and they have like a 7 or 8 out of 10, right? Whereas you'd give like the American banks like a 5 out of 10. You know what I mean? Like, it's all relative. So you've got to. What you don't want to spend years of your life working on something that inherently is not that demanded, because you could do it, right? Whereas if you had this attitude of all ideas are shit until someone buys it, and you can prove if people are going to buy it, and then they bought it, so you then started building it, then you could pick the ideas that inherently have what I call it getting in the middle of the river. So this is the idea that you start a business, and if it's in a growth industry, so if you start in a growth industry, that by getting into the river, even if you're crap, you end up downstream, even though you weren't very good. And if you're really good, then you end up really far downstream. But if you go into a business which is inherently difficult, like it's a declining industry, or your idea is just not really wanted, then you're going to be swimming upstream. So now, even if you're really good, you don't get that far. So you got to use the world and the environment and place yourself in a position where the wind blows, kind of thing, Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of energy to go nowhere.
I think also what is one of your strengths, Nick, from my observation, anyways. And you can hear it in your sharing that you're not attached to, you're not kind of caught up in yourself so much that it kind of gets in the way. And I think that's a huge strength in, you know, you're very dynamic and you adapt and you kind of test and try and, okay, move on to the next thing. And I think sometimes when people put their whole life and soul into an idea and they're so attached to it that it becomes their identity. And that's, as you mentioned before, people kind of hang on to it, you know, for longer than it needs to exist for, rather than just kill it, move on to the next thing.
Exactly. You see some people who've taken money from people, like friends and family, maybe some investors, and they're really like cautious about shutting their business down. Look, anyone who invests in these things, if they didn't go into it if you told them that their money's safe and all that, then that's on you. But assuming you did the right thing and it was clear that it's totally a risk investment, it could all go to zero. You're saving everyone a ton of time and money by killing it. Like, just if it's not going anywhere, like, create a new business and a new opportunity, and hopefully you can redeem yourself, so to speak. But imagine if you ask these people for more money to support this not so demanded idea. Now it's just getting worse. So no, I think there's no shame in calling it a day. And of course, I love the idea of never give up. One of my kind of childhood heroes was this guy, Sir Peter Blake, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few times. And his tagline was never give up. So it's a different thing, right? Never giving up is totally valid, and you should never give up. But killing an idea or a project is part of success. Is part of what success looks like, because you can't open the next door to the better opportunity, the better idea, unless you close the door to the old one. So don't waste time closing the door if the writing's on the wall.
Now, I can't end this podcast, although we're coming to the end, without asking you two more questions. And one of them is about the software that you're involved in creating that was super effective during the earthquakes in New Zealand, because I think that is just such a showcase of what's possible through sport. I know that was in the newspapers as well and everything, so it was really valued. So can you share a little bit about what that was about?
So I'm just going to check I've got the date right. I'm pretty sure we're talking 2011, right?
And just what you learned through that as well, Nick, because it was such a hectic time as well, and it just came in so handy during that period of time.
Yeah, okay. So I started the software company Geoff in 2009, 2010, and basically we had the idea that tradies and stuff could get their jobs on their phone, right? Instead of getting a phone call or a job sheet, they just look at their phone and go to their job and do their job and record on their phone and so forth. To give you some context, like the iPad only came out in 2010, right? So like people had Android, we were developing on Android 1.6, we were developing initially on iOS 3. So it's just really, I have to say this because people don't realize that we were not living in a mobile world 10 years ago. We were just at the beginning of this, what we take for granted. So I'm just trying to set the scene. One of the reasons I moved to Melbourne actually was because I couldn't find any company in New Zealand that had iPhones for its workforce in 2010. Couldn't find one. In Australia, there was a few more. So that was kind of why I set up shop in Melbourne to grow the business. So anyway, 2011, a devastating earthquake hits Christchurch. A few hundred people died, mostly in one building that was badly engineered. But anyway, the city was devastated, and there's a lot of liquefaction, which is where the ground becomes mush and liquid starts coming up. So this guy Sam Johnson, he's got a fantastic career worth following. He set up this thing called the Student Volunteer Army, and his idea was to basically take the students of the local universities and harness their manpower to try and solve the problems of the community, which was mostly crap everywhere and just disaster. So anyway, we reached out to them and said, well, hey, how are you gonna manage all these people, right? Like, how are you gonna know where to send them and how are they know what to do? So we basically took our software that was in fairly early stages, and we worked with Sam and his team to deploy it to the students. So you could either have it on an app, or you could have it on your web browser, or you could also use SMS as well for people who had older phones. We worked with Sam to coordinate. I can't remember how many people it was, how many thousands of students, but anyway, several thousand students were basically being told, go here, Mrs. Johnson needs help with her backyard, there's stuff everywhere, sort of thing. And so, we helped the Student Volunteer Army do their incredible work, which was to put Christchurch back together. And yeah, our software played a small role in kind of coordinating all those people. So yeah, it was a really fun project. And I think nowadays, they've even gone 10 years later, they've got their own app and their own system just for this. So I guess it was one of those things where disaster creates the need for innovation, and you do what you can to make it work. Yeah, and we also had like a public website where people could report stuff as well. So we created a public facing website form where people could log the jobs. So the people who needed the help could go on the web, put in their problem, and then that would go into our system, and then from our system would go out to the relevant team of people who could do the work. So it was not just the back end; it was also collecting the problems and distributing them to the people who can help.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that, because it kind of shows how the product has adapted in a time of crisis to serve a totally different.
But you want to segue into like why this company has not been the most successful company. So the reason it wasn't the most successful company is because we didn't define our customer well enough, right? So because you could use it for a student volunteer army and a plumber and a truck driver is why it's not a very valuable company today. It's still listed on the stock exchange. It's still going, doing a few million revenue, whatever. I'm not associated in any way. Sold out years ago. Haven't been on the board for like before we even listed. I stepped off the board. So yeah, no association. But yeah, and there's two reasons why it didn't define its customer properly. One is it couldn't, and two, we didn't know. So the one we couldn't is because remember I said we couldn't find anyone with iPhones. Imagine if we said we will target companies with iPhones who are plumbers. Well, we couldn't even do the first bit, so how would we do the second one? So one, we couldn't have defined our customer properly at the time. Could have later, but we didn't. We'll throw some people who who now own it and stuff could have, but they still haven't. And two, we didn't know. So we were, like I said, we were developing on like the very first version of iOS, and we were one of the first SaaS companies. So there was no playbook about how you do this. Probably, to be fair, like targeting a customer is not even playbook. That's just marketing 101. But anyway, the lesson is it is better to define a tiny customer segment who's good for your product on day one than it is to define a big segment, right? Because if you make the best tool for plumbers in Hawthorne, right, ever, and they buy it, then you're in business, and you're probably in business forever. Because anyone who tries to like make software for plumbers in Melbourne will be worse than the plumbing software for Hawthorne plumbers. You know what I mean? So you'll be in business forever. And then what you do is you go, okay, cool, I want to be a bigger business. So then you just go to the next suburb that's adjacent to Hawthorne, right? And because you've got customers in Hawthorne, they're gonna who cross-pollinate the ones in the other suburbs. So you're going to get this naturally lower cost acquisition by doing these adjacent, we call like adjacent groups, I guess, what do you want to call it? So yeah, moral of the story, yeah, just be super targeted about who your product's for, because the more it's better to win one little group than it is to have a go at a big group, because one little group can easily become the circles around it, the circles around that, and there's no limit to where you can go. But you'd rather, if you target if you build a product for everyone, you really build it for no one.
That's amazing, Nick. Thanks. There's so many golden nuggets in this conversation for people, and it's super invigorating and motivating as well for people that have an idea, that want to test it and launch it and see if it has legs. So thanks so much for sharing so honestly as well. And I've got one more question to end on, because you've got a beautiful family of 2 kids and a beautiful wife, Tamara, and you've had to grow these businesses at the different stages in your journey in different locations around the world. And one's been Slovenia, where you're heading back there soon, in Australia and New Zealand. So what's it been like moving around and even the different cultures in these places and doing business in different places?
I'd say the number one learning you get is how blessed you are and lucky you are to be from this part of the world. I cannot tell you enough how easy New Zealand and Australia, to a similar extent, but not quite so. New Zealand and Australia is like right up there, and New Zealand's like right there. And this is not just anecdotal. So New Zealand's actually ranked as New Zealand and Singapore trade places for the easiest places in the world to do business, right? And Australia's right up there. And it's just true. Like, we have no idea how lucky we are. Like, we still have to do our GST returns and all this sort of crap. And, opening a bank account's a pain in the ass wherever you live these days. So there's still stuff to do, but comparatively, we have nothing to complain about in this part of the world. Like, you have no idea. Like, overseas, like in Europe and stuff, the tax departments and the stuff, it's all got to be to the cent. You got to have a document for everything. You got to get things notarized all the time. Like, so I'm just going to start off with a bit of a rant and compliment. New Zealand, Australia have done a really good job of creating a relatively easy business environment to get started. So if you're from this part of the world, honestly, it's not predatory. You don't feel like you're going to be punished for making a mistake, right? Which is really quite a good mental place to be. Like, okay, you made an error, it can be fixed. Whereas I do believe from my experience in Europe, not the UK is easy, but everywhere else in Europe pretty much, is you kind of feel a little bit like if you make a mistake, you're going to be punished, which is terrible, right? Like, oh God, I made this small, I paid 2 cents less VAT, or I don't have a document for that taxi ride. Oh God. Like, so yeah, if you can choose where you start a business, New Zealand, Australia, great. Great places to do it. Super simple. There's no real restrictions on what you can do. The US is obviously the home of the biggest businesses in the world, and they have a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of reasons why the biggest companies come from there. It is a lot more complicated though. Okay, you don't have to do a GST or VAT return every month, because they don't actually yet. They've just got sales tax, which is on the revenue side. There's nothing on the expense side. So kind of easier there, but just all their different company structures and there's just a lot of different state taxes and rules and all that. So the US is a bit more complicated. A lot of tech startups, if we're talking about, so if you're doing a normal company, you just want to build it up and sell it to under say a couple of mil, then you obviously set it up in the country that you're living in and where the customers are, right? So just do that. And if you're setting up a tech startup, so like say Slovenia, right? A lot of the well-informed Slovenian tech startups will start straight away as a Delaware corporation in the States. And the reason is that they know that if they're successful in proving demand and therefore attract investment, that the investor will not invest into their Slovene company, right? They know that, so they don't even start with a Slovene company. They just go straight to a US, and the investor, whether they be in Europe or the US or New Zealand or wherever, is like, oh, it's a Delaware corporation. We know what that means. We know how the court system works. We've got documents that are templated that work for this. So for certain companies, it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to do a US company, then use Stripe Atlas. So Stripe being the payment company, Atlas being the product. Use that. By far and away the cheapest and easiest way to do it. The other really hot place for registering companies for tech is the UK. UK is a lot like New Zealand, Australia from a legal, accounting, tax perspective. So it's all quite straightforward and quite frankly, quite easy to understand. And that's also very investable. Funds can invest in the companies from the UK easily. New Zealand and Australia, I would say that it used to be a problem. So if you had a New Zealand company, it could be a deal blocker to a US investor. It still is an element of friction, right? It still adds friction and potentially lowers your number of parties that are interested and therefore lowers your valuation. But it's definitely not as much as a problem as it used to be. And you can always flip the company as well. So you can flip the company into a US company later on. So anyway, doing business in parts of the world, culture, all that kind of stuff. So I'd say in Eastern Europe, there's a lot of thinking like that deals have a winner and a loser, which I hate. I hate that so much. Like I'm the kind of person who, honestly, I would never do a deal that's one-sided. I only will do deals that are mutually beneficial to both parties. But yeah, there is a bit of a mentality there that a deal has a winner and a loser. And someone's getting screwed and all this kind of stuff. I also trust really easily. So I go into things trusting people until they prove the opposite. Whereas in other parts of the world, because remember, New Zealand's the least corrupt country in the world, right? The least corrupt and the easiest place to do business. And we're a function of our environment. I spent 25 years here. So I'm programmed to trust that someone's not corrupt and they're a good person until they do otherwise, which creates a lot of opportunities. And that's probably why I kind of do all these things, because I'm like not looking for reasons not to. But on the flip side, my experience has been in other parts of the world that people are the other way and that they only trust after a while. And then they're kind of assuming the worst of people up front. So that creates I I think, an unnecessary impediment to getting things done. But that's definitely one of the biggest cultural differences, I'd say. And for what it's worth, I don't let it get in my way. I still trust them, even if they don't trust me. I'm not going to change who I am and start being doubtful of everyone just because that's how a lot of people in the rest of the world seem to be. Because, I mean, like, am I going to trust? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you've got your idea, you're doing the best with it. I also, it's not a bit side, but so many things are non-consequential, right? Like, if something goes, okay, we did get a bit screwed by a builder. A builder in Slovenia went bankrupt. We lost about 100 grand, probably 100,000 euros. So that sucked. I probably trusted them a bit much. So I can't say it hasn't never bitten me in the ass, but hey, you could do all your due diligence in the world. These guys have been in business for 12 years. Like, one of their government contracts didn't pay up. I think they were penalties for being late or whatever. So, it's pretty unpredictable. So yeah, you will get bit, but look, it's only money. There's always more money. So don't let it don't let you slow you down. And then, so that's the business side, and then obviously the family side. So what was the family question you wanted to ask?
Just, I mean, raising a family is, almost a full-time job in itself.
Yeah.
And and your kids have been quite young. They're still young, but so I really admire that actually the most, because you're building a business and you're kind of so involved in that, but also raising a young family and moving between countries, like, just on top of all that. So
So yeah, I think on that side, the first decision I ever made. Well, not first decision, but my first professional decision to build my own business and sell it has had the biggest impact. That was 5 years before my kids were born in 2015. Has had the biggest impact because that created that initial capital from a small capital outlay to get the business started. It was online, and then that money gave me the money to do my own companies, and it gave me money to invest in some of the companies I spoke about. And then ultimately it's given me the ability to wake up every morning, and if I want to spend it with my kids, or I want to go to see, like, the kids have got their different things on at school, running races or sports days, and I go to most of them because I can, whereas other people in employment can't, right? It's very difficult, or they'll have to make it up somewhere else. So yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding. It's like the biggest gift you can have, right? Is to be able to choose your time. And so my kids, I obviously can go the other way. I don't know how much Elon Musk kids see him, for instance, right? He's like 5 kids and he's, changing the world in many ways. So he's kind of helping us all, but, he's obviously probably pretty time poor. So in my case, I'm using that time I have in the other way, and I'm not working ridiculous hours on my startup, working normal hours. The more I am clear about the problem, the more conviction I can have, and that doesn't have to come at the cost of my family time. So yeah, me and Tamara spend tons of time together. We can go play tennis during the day or whatever. We do spend tons of time with the kids, like ridiculous amounts of time with our kids. It's been the benefit of the decisions that have been made in time. So and then in terms of kids, like, I think one thing I would say is, like, don't underestimate them. They're so much more advanced and clever and sophisticated than we give them credit for. So our kids have spent the first 4 years in Slovenia, and they've spent the last 2 years here, or nearly 2 years, year and a half in New Zealand. And so they spoke like 80% Slovenian, 20% English, and now they speak 80% English, 20% Slovenian, but they can speak both. They take on board everything that you do, right? They're such a reflection of you. So, be careful what you say and do. You're the role model. But they're just so clever, and they're so sharp, and they're just always exceeding what you think they're capable of, even though they're kids. So and then in terms of, I can't compare schools. The kids will go to school at Slovenia fairly soon, but they're at school in New Zealand at the moment. I would say that the New Zealand schooling system seems great from what we've seen. Very friendly, rewarding, and I guess on an educational perspective, like, I guess what I've done definitely has shaped what I see as what's important. So for what it's worth, I think that as long as your kids have got good social skills and can read and write and do maths, then and know what they want, then that's all I expect from school. I think in terms of, I expect it on us to help them find what they're passionate about, what they want. But I don't expect. I don't know. I haven't said this in the interview already, but I really don't have expectations of anything these days. I expect nothing. If you get a good result, fantastic. And if you don't have expectations, you're always going to be happy. So that's how I kind of approach it with the schooling. Like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Same as the business. We'll see how it goes. You don't know unless you try. And if you get a good result, you can be very pleased about it. So yeah, I guess this is a common theme. But yeah, didn't have any expectations about the school here in New Zealand. Fantastic, been brilliant. And we've been able to spend a lot of time with the kids and see them grow. So yeah, and the country, well, the immediate environment's always you and your partner, right? So I think that's the stable thing, and then everything else is just a location. And the more you move, the more that becomes true. Home becomes where you are and not where your stuff is. And that's exactly what's happened to us.
Unreal. What a beautiful way to finish the podcast today. And just the trust that you have in life and, in no expectations and in people. I love that. And I think, as you said, it just opens the doors to so many more possibilities than if you're kind of, guarded and that sort of thing. I think that's who we are at our core as humans as well, just, trusting of each other and trusting of life. And as you said, that's how you can be happy, when you're grateful and just don't have all these, attached to this outcome being the case or this. So, Nick, you've shared so much with us over in this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing all of your lessons through business, and from investing to starting up to putting it on the stock exchange to moving around through different cultures. And so thank you so much. It's been awesome. And I can't wait to share this with the listeners.
Hey, thanks so much, Steph. It's been really fun.
Thanks for listening to our Inspiring Humans podcast, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any inspiring human in mind that you would like to nominate, please reach out and let us know. Also, you're very welcome to become part of our Facebook group called Inspiring Humans, where you can connect with incredible people from around the globe. Thirdly, if you are interested in being part of a global network, we have an incredible community at 7continentscouncil.com, where we hold events, programs, and many different initiatives that you can be involved in. Thank you, and see you again soon.